This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Tansi, good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sheila North. Janet Stewart is away this week. It's been a tense weekend for our neighbours and friends in Saskatchewan, including on the James Smith Cree Nation. Very tense today, too, as a reported sighting of a mass murder suspect, Miles Sanderson, turned out to be a false alarm. Police had surrounded a residence in the community, blocked roads, evacuated homes, and told people to shelter inside. Sanderson is wanted in connection with the deadly stabbing rampage in the area on Sunday. Sanderson's brother Damien, who was also a suspect in the attacks, was found dead yesterday. CBC's Adam Hunter has more.
The communities of James Smith Cree Nation and nearby Weldon are dealing with the aftermath of a mass stabbing that has left 10 dead and 18 more injured. On Monday, the body of 31-year-old Damien Sanderson was found on James Smith Cree Nation. Police say his injuries do not appear self-inflicted. He is the 11th person to die. He had been named as a suspect. His brother Miles is facing 3 counts of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and break-and-enter. The names of some of those killed are slowly starting to emerge as families share details. One of the victims is Lana Head, a 49-year-old mother of 5. Earl Burns Sr., a veteran, is also among the dead. Gloria Burns, a 62-year-old frontline worker, was also killed. Her family says she was working at the James Smith Cree Nation Health Clinic when a crisis call came in. She died responding to the call.
She raised 4 of her nephews. Their mother passed away when they were very young, and she took them as her own children, and she raised them the best she could. And that's the kind of person she was. And for her to go into a situation like this where she helping people, even though it costed her life, that's what she was. That's who she was.
Another victim, 77-year-old widower Wes Peterson of Weldon. His neighbor says she collapsed when she heard the news.
Takes care of everyone here. He helped if someone needed a hand. He helped. He was a kind-hearted man. Today
in Vancouver, the Prime Minister was asked about the situation.
I spoke with chiefs a couple of days ago. I spoke with yesterday. I spoke with the Premier. We're going to continue to be there while people grieve, while people heal.
We're also learning more about Miles Sanderson. Parole documents from February show he has nearly 60 convictions, including assault with a weapon, uttering threats, assaulting a police officer, and robbery. Saskatoon police say they'd been searching for Sanderson after he failed to meet with his caseworker and was considered unlawfully at large. Adam Hunter, CBC News, Regina.
The tragedy in Saskatchewan has sent shockwaves around the world. It's also hit close to home for many in Manitoba. CBC's Austin Grabish reports.
Tonight, people are trying to make sense of the unthinkable in Saskatchewan.
This is a very significant tragedy for those communities, for Saskatchewan, for Canada.
Minogwazabi Anishinaabe First Nation Chief Derek Neepanak is fearful.
We can relate to the rise of violence. We can relate to the issues around drug abuse. We can relate to feeling unsafe in our communities at this time.
Neepanak is friends with the chief of James Smith Cree Nation, the site of the mass murder Sunday that left 10 dead and 18 injured. The chief fears with the explosion of meth and rise in violence on reserve, something like this will happen again.
There's a lot of families in our communities living in almost constant fear. Are they the next to be victimized in some violent act, such as a home invasion?
Some community members in James Smith Cree Nation have pointed to drugs as possibly fueling this mass murder. One of the accused, Miles Sanderson, had a violent history and problems with both drugs and alcohol. Problems Neepanak sees daily in his community that has no police presence, instead just a part-time safety officer.
We need access to resources and supports to get ahead of this, and those resources and supports simply are not there today.
Former RCMP officers are watching this case closely, and one isn't sure if the Mounties have enough resources to handle the magnitude of this historic tragedy.
You got to remember that this type of situation is not something that is common.
Retired officer Sherry Benson-Podolchuk says with tons of places to hide on the prairies, this manhunt could last a while.
They're not going to become fixated on one city. They will keep expanding to make sure that they're not missing anybody trying to escape.
Outside the Manitoba legislature, flags are at half-mast, a sad reminder of the carnage next door. Austin Grabish, CBC News, Winnipeg.
In other news, university students in Manitoba will have to solve a new math problem this year, balancing rising costs. Already, some say the numbers just aren't adding up. CBC's Andrew Wiles has this story.
As they walk the halls and get started with school, many students attending universities in Manitoba this semester are also thinking about money. The University of Manitoba Students' Union says since May, more students than usual have applied to them for help to pay their bills.
Maybe they are not being paid enough at work, or maybe they are out of their jobs, or they are still looking for jobs in that meantime, so they need some additional funds in order for them to be able to take care of themselves.
The money comes from a $20,000 hardship fund. It helps students who are in a jam with everything but tuition. Karu Hogo says last year the money was enough, but this year needs have soared.
Something that you are maybe paying for $10 and it increases to $5 to $15, increases by $5. That is something that we are seeing is happening all over the grocery stores, whereby the students have to buy groceries.
Inflation hit a 39-year peak in July. The price of gas has gone down a bit, but the cost of food remains high. Student leaders say as students continue to struggle with their basic needs, they'll also need more mental health support.
If a student is worrying about their grades, but they have to worry about rent, if they're having a hard time finding a job, this could cause anxiety, this could cause depression, and all this in turn affects their studies as well.
It's easy to get overwhelmed. It's easy to get, disturbed, discouraged. It's easy to get defeated. Like, I can't do this anymore, right? I can't do it. So you have to have a very strong support system.
Adeleye says students will have to find a way to pay their bills without losing sight of their goal.
You need the tuition, but you also need to get good grades. Right? You also need to get good grades. So you have to find a way to balance out that scenario.
Karu Hogo says students are eager to get involved with all university has to offer, a chance to build community and express their passions. She just hopes they get the help they need to enjoy the experience. Andrew Wiles, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And with school about to start, some will be in class in Manitoba for the first time. That includes those who escaped the war in Ukraine. It's too early to know exactly how many, but the province says more than 800 children have arrived in our province in recent months. As the CBC's Alana Cole shows us, schools are getting ready.
Maxime Ohrimenko is about to start kindergarten. But for him, it's more than just a new class or teacher. Maxime and his mom, Yulia, are from Ukraine. He's about to learn in a new language in a new country.
You have a very kind Canadian people in this city. I think everything will be okay.
Yulia and Maxime arrived here in May. This video shows part of their journey. After sheltering underground for more than a week, Yulia made the decision to flee the war.
It was not possible to live with my son underground.
They aren't alone. The Manitoba Parents for Ukrainian Education says it's been working with families like Yulia's over the summer. The organization advocates for the English-Ukrainian bilingual program offered in 11 Manitoba schools.
They've been through a lot of things. Like I've heard awful stories from war, and these kids don't need any more stress. So the English-Ukrainian program just helps them adapt softly. Like it's a softer way to get into the Canadian society.
HC Avery Middle School offers the bilingual program. Principal Andrew Hildebrandt says as soon as registration opened, 8 students who arrived recently enrolled.
At least at this point, we're able to put all the students that are coming from Ukraine into a classroom with a Ukrainian-speaking teacher. So I think our hope is that helps them become a part of the community and settle in as quickly as they can.
Because they're expecting higher enrollment numbers, they'll have 2 Ukrainian-speaking teachers dedicated to the program. Maxim doesn't speak English yet, but his mom thinks that will happen quickly once he starts learning in both English and Ukrainian. They're getting settled here, but it's been difficult.
I cried a lot. I needed to organize my life. It was not so easy.
Yulia says her husband is still in Ukraine and doesn't know when she'll see him again. So this year, the family will celebrate the start of school with photos and phone calls. Alana Cole, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And while summer holidays are over, election signs are back on lawns and boulevards. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, very few of these signs this year are for women running for office.
Natalie Smith is one of 3 people trying to unseat 12-year Councillor Ross Eady in the North End's Minarski ward.
The big thing is putting, the old North End motto, people before profit.
Smith is a rarity in this election, a woman running for council. There are only 6 women registered so far out of 36 council candidates, and Smith is the only one who's not an incumbent. She figures attacks on women in politics are scaring others away.
I think we're all a lot more online, and I think we're seeing a lot more people being a lot more vocal about what they don't like. And there's a lot of influence out there that is very misogynist.
Smith also says the pandemic has put more women in a precarious economic position, and not just in Winnipeg.
A lot of it has to do with cultural norms and expectations, the ways in which women are socialized still to be the primary caregivers of their families and their communities. So it makes it difficult for women to find the free time.
It's not just women avoiding politics. As of today, no one is challenging incumbent councillors in 4 out of 15 Winnipeg wards. North Kildonan councillor Jeff Brawadi is so far running unopposed. He still spent the long weekend putting lawn signs together.
It's a little surprising at this point, this far into the election, that there's I think 4 of us still without opponents. I don't take that to mean that everybody's happy with everything I've ever done. I know that's not the case.
North Kildonan hasn't known any councillor other than Brawadi since 2006. But on the opposite end of town, Charleswood is having its 4th straight race without an incumbent. 3 straight councillors decided to run for mayor or MP.
It's very important that people who are running in these wards are from these wards and understand these wards.
Evan Duncan says he'd like councillors to focus on council. He also wishes more women would run.
My household is 4 females, and I want to do whatever I can to build up females, to make sure that my 3 daughters can be as successful as any man out there, more successful than any man out there.
There's still 2 more weeks for candidates to get into these races, but after that September 20th cutoff, the election's only 5 weeks away. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
On the mayoral race, Scott Gillingham promised to spend more money on roads. The St. James councillor says if he's elected mayor next month, Winnipeg will spend an additional $12.5 million a year of its own money on road repairs. That's over and above the $111 million already in the budget for next year. Gillingham has been on council for 8 years, but he says the neglect of Winnipeg infrastructure goes back decades.
We're here because previous administrations neglected our infrastructure in favor of short-term thinking, short-term priorities, and short-term politics. The roads we're repairing today should have been and could have been repaired 10, 20, even 30 years ago.
Also today, mayoral candidate Sean Loney promised to get more affordable housing built in Winnipeg. He says if he's elected, he's convinced foundations to donate money to a $100 million housing trust. That trust, in turn, would create housing rents geared to people's incomes.
I'm going to say, Sean, $100 million, where the heck's the city going to get that money from? And this is a solutions-based campaign. And there's lots of money around. We just need to think about solutions in a different way.
Winnipeg now has 15 mayoral candidates. Vincent Gabrielli joined the race today. He's the former director of Centro Caboto, an Italian community center. And Manitoba MP and interim leader of the Federal Conservative Party, Candice Bergen, will not run in the next election. Bergen says while representing the riding of Portage-Lisgar for the past 14 years has been the honor of her life, she looks forward to opening new doors and embracing new opportunities. Her announcement comes just days before her party chooses its next leader. The Federal Conservative Party selects a new leader this weekend. A long-planned memorial was officially unveiled today that honors the sacrifices of Manitoba's firefighters. More than 100 firefighters were on hand to see the monument at the southwest corner of Memorial Park. Talks to create the memorial started 15 years ago. The statue commemorates local firefighters who died on the job and those who died from diseases they sustained through work. Former Premier Gary Dewar was on hand for the unveiling. Dewar was Premier when Manitoba was the first Canadian jurisdiction to recognize a strong association between firefighting and certain diseases like cancer.
I was pleased to work and develop the first legislation anywhere literally in the world, and we did it based not only on the passion of the families and the firefighters, but also on science. And this law has stood up not only in Manitoba, but it's stood up in every province in Canada. It's been passed.
And the St. James Civic Centre has reopened following a series of upgrades. The City of Winnipeg announced the phased reopening of the centre, starting with the facilities south side today. The 56-year-old centre received $10 million in upgrades, which includes improvements to its mechanical and electrical systems, roof, and renovated spaces. The centre's Ab McDonald Arena is expected to reopen to the public on September 25. After fierce competition at the Dragon Boat World Championships, the only Indigenous competitor with Team Canada came back to Winnipeg with 7 medals. CBC's Joanne Roberts has that story.
Trina Ross holds her medals close. As soon as she spotted her family and members of her community waiting, she couldn't keep the smile off her face. Ross is the only Indigenous person who competed with Team Canada at the Dragon Boat World Championships in the Czech Republic. Today, she's back as a multi-medalist.
So we got 3 gold, a silver, and 4 bronze. And that's with the teamwork.
Yeah, exactly.
The team celebrated Ross's roots every time they flew the Canadian flag. Whenever red and white went up, so did the flag from Ross's community of Pimicikamak Cree Nation.
It's an honor for our people and our own nation's flag to be hoisted at Czech Republic is really something else.
Very happy to represent all the Indigenous ladies.
Ross says it was an overwhelming and emotional competition. For her, the most difficult part was having back-to-back races.
We just went from boat to another boat, and it was hard, but we managed to finish.
Councillor for Pimicikamak, Lee Thomas, grew up with Ross. He says he knew she would overcome every obstacle at the World Championships.
She has that dedication, that drive to be better. She works really hard. Her work ethic is second to none's.
Thomas says this is why Ross is a role model for the youth in their community.
You know, it gives them a bar to live up to. You know, she set the bar real high, and hopefully her kids will meet it.
Upon her return, Ross was presented with a star blanket from Pimicikamak Cree Nation and a medallion from the Assembly of First Nations. Ross wants the children of her community to know anything is possible. Joanne Roberts, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Meteorologist John Sauder joins us now. And John, did you know that lots of good canoers, now dragon boat racers, are from northern Manitoba?
Yeah.
Pimicikamak as well.
Yeah,
so it's
from
pretty
the Cross
exciting.
Lake area.
Yes.
We have some video coming up a little later tonight.
Oh, yeah?
From Cross Lake. A storm went through there and dropped some hail this afternoon, so that's coming up in our next weather. But
okay.
What an athlete she is. That's fantastic.
Congratulations.
All right, back to school, as
Yes.
you know, doesn't really look like back to school weather. Usually kids have their new raincoats and rubber boots and they're splashing in puddles. Not the case with this back to school that happens tomorrow. Let's start with the current conditions and we'll get into a back to school forecast. We've dropped from 25 to 24. Northwest winds at times today gusting to 40. Now northwest at 13 and the pressure is still rising now at 101.9 kilopascals. Now, how's it going to be in the morning as the kids head back to school? Well, it'll be nice and sunny and 12 degrees. Now, the overnight low is a little cooler than that. This 12 degrees is kind of a walk to school temperature, but on the way home, it'll be shorts and t-shirts and definitely an outdoor recess tomorrow. So these are the clouds on satellite right now that are showing some of those storms that have been moving through the northeast today. They should continue to move out tonight with some early evening risk of a thunderstorm around Thompson, Cross Lake, and down through Norway House, and certainly through Island Lake and God's Lake regions. As that system pulls away, it'll clear up tonight and a much brighter, drier day on the way for tomorrow. Look at all the sunshine across the southern prairies, including southern Manitoba. And that's thanks to the upper ridge and this surface high pressure. This surface high will move off to the east of us and provide us with a southerly flow at about 20 to 25 tomorrow afternoon. It'll be a sunny and warm day. This is going to bring in even warmer air from the south. So expect a lot of 28s and 29s in the south. And as mentioned, a brighter day in the north. Then another system moves in Wednesday night into Thursday morning. More showers and storms in the same areas that we saw them today. And this trailing little frontal zone, middle of the night, might see a raindrop or two, but certainly a cloudier day on the way for Thursday and some showers on the Ontario side of the border as that system pulls away. And then as we get into Friday, we are back into a brighter situation, a brighter weather pattern, but Friday will be the cooler day of the week. All right, 8 degrees tonight. That's the overnight low. Should reach that sometime around sunrise. And then walk to school weather, 12 degrees in the sunshine, light winds in the afternoon. It's a bit breezy, but a warm high of 28 in the sunshine. And then we're still warm with that cloud cover on Thursday, high of 19 Friday, Saturday back into the 20s. Keep in mind the normal high is now 20 degrees, 21 Saturday, and getting warmer after that as we get into the second half of the weekend and on into next week.
Weather Update is brought to you by Home Equip, your trusted local source for Pride Mobility scooters. From sales to rental and repair, our team is here to serve you.
It's a big week for students. Back to school means back to buses, bikes, and boots on the ground. More people are on the roads, and CAA Manitoba wants to remind motorists to be extra careful, especially in designated school zones with reduced speed limits at 30. Data released by CAA shows that dangerous driving behaviors are still prevalent on city streets. To talk about this, we are joined by Alicia Dacey. She is the communications manager with CAA Manitoba. Good day to you. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. So what kinds of risky behaviors are we seeing?
Oh, well, I don't think there's any surprises here. Texting and driving tends to come to mind when we talk about dangerous driving, excessive speed, things like bombing in and out of traffic, those kinds of things. So when we talk about dangerous driving, it's usually things that could be ultimately avoided.
Okay, and if we look back at the past few Septembers back to school, what does the data show?
The data shows that while those dangerous driving behaviors are falling, they still haven't fallen to pre-pandemic levels. And I mean, obviously, CAA Manitoba, we want to see those numbers fall to zero. We don't want to see any kind of dangerous driving behaviors on the roads, but just the fact that we're still seeing numbers that are higher than when the pandemic began is still concerning.
And we understand that there was a spike in 2020. How did the drop in restrictions add to the number of incidents?
Well, it's hard to say for sure, but we believe that, things are kind of loosening up that summer. A lot of the restrictions had been loosened. There was a lot less traffic on the road. Students necessarily weren't back in school full time. And so I think people just kind of felt like there's less traffic on the road, so it could be a free-for-all. And tragically, that was obviously the wrong mindset. We still had 10 distracted driving fatalities last year. Now in 2020, that was 20 fatalities. So again, that number is coming down, but it's still not where we want it to be. Our average is usually between 2 and 4. And ultimately, of course, we'd like to see it go down to 0.
And while it might be common sense, can you remind motorists what they need to keep in mind when it comes to school zones?
Obviously, it's time to slow down. I think we're all used to that by now. September 1st, you slow down. But remember that students are starting school in various communities, and everybody has a different start date. So those students might be so happy to see their friends. They might dart out onto the road. They might jump out in front of a car or a school bus. It's just time to slow down, be extra vigilant as you're driving in school zones or driving anywhere near school or daycare this week.
And before we let you go tonight, can you just remind us how much it costs for tickets that are issued around school zones, and if motorists pass lights that are flashing?
So if a bus driver has their stop motion light out and that stop sign is flashing and you pass that bus, you're going to get 2 demerits and a fine of $672. It's a big one.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you, Alicia. Alicia Dacey is the communications manager with CAA Manitoba, reminding all of us to slow down. Thank you.
Thanks so much, folks.
Still ahead, going into debt over the cost of living. A new report says Canadians are upping their credit card spending as they try to keep up with inflation. More after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Welcome back. As high inflation rates continue to drive up the cost of living, a new report suggests many Canadians may be turning to credit cards just to get by. CBC's Nisha Patel explains.
Gas, groceries, back-to-school supplies. Prices have been climbing for months.
I have like 3 kids. Now they have to go into schools, clothes, food, lunch. Everything costs money, a lot of money.
Now more Canadians are putting those purchases on credit cards, with balances hitting the highest level in 3 years.
I definitely have 2 credit cards that I go between when one is getting a little on the scary side.
I'm owing a lot of money. I'm owing a lot of money in the credit card.
On average, consumers are spending more than $2,300 a month using their credit cards. That's up 22% compared to the same time a year ago.
It's lots of people across all age groups, across a lot of different credit risk scores, across different regions.
As Canadians stayed close to home during the pandemic, debt levels sank and savings soared. Now, thanks to inflation, it's harder to make ends meet.
The challenge is credit card debt spirals. Every month you're paying 19%-ish interest on the balance. And it's really hard to keep up with that kind of level of payment.
And interest rates are marching higher. Many borrowers are paying more on their loans, leaving them even more strapped for cash. Experts say another factor eating away at budgets, paychecks for many workers just aren't keeping up with inflation.
The price of milk, beans, all the basics pasta, it's gone up. So I don't see employers giving us a cost of living raise of 8%. So we're basically dealing with a huge shortfall.
And while government aid kept debt down during the height of the pandemic, subsidies have dried up. Now personal bankruptcies are on the rise.
There is some significant financial stress coming through because obviously consumers don't tend to go insolvent unless they're in a really difficult situation.
A difficult situation that may continue until rampant inflation gets under control. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Liz Truss took office today as Britain's new Prime Minister. Truss was formally named as Boris Johnson's successor during a meeting today with Queen Elizabeth at Balmoral Castle. As Chris Brown reports, she takes the helm as the country faces some of its most difficult challenges in decades.
Boris Johnson's turbulent time as Prime Minister ended with cheers from staff and a classic Boris speech. Full of pithy metaphors and a hint of bitterness, he didn't get to finish his term.
The baton will be handed over in what has unexpectedly turned out to be a relay race. They changed the rules halfway through, but never mind that now.
With that, he was off to Balmoral, Scotland to hand in his resignation to the Queen. Minutes later, it was Liz Truss's turn for an audience, the 15th time the 96-year-old monarch has sworn in a new prime minister. Then, with cameras tracking her plane and her motorcade's trip to Downing Street, Truss managed to time a break in a rainstorm long enough to talk about her first steps.
I will take action this week to deal with energy bills and to secure our future energy supply. I am confident that together we can ride out the storm.
Energy costs are headed to the stratosphere with the tripling of bills from the spring. That's potentially catastrophic for small businesses, such as Harry Niazi's fish and chip shop.
Fish has increased, oil has increased, gas has increased, electricity has increased, everything's increased.
He won't jack up prices because he says consumers are also feeling the squeeze.
I'm hoping with our new Prime Minister, she will cap prices and we will breathe a sigh of relief so we can focus on what we know best. I know fish and chips.
Truss initially talked about tax cuts as the best way to help consumers. Now it appears she's going to freeze bills and add $150 billion Canadian to the public debt to pay for it. Britain's government will now have a very different feel. Liz Truss lacks Boris Johnson's big personality and way with words, but supporters say she's honest and shouldn't be underestimated. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
A beloved horse veterinarian who was well known within horse enthusiast communities in West Quebec and Eastern Ontario has died. She took her own life this summer. She was also one of the few specialists in the region, and over time her clinic has taken on and attended to animals belonging to 600 clients. Nicole Williams reports.
These twin foals are by all accounts a miracle. Star and Blaze were born this summer in Luskville, Quebec. It's very rare for horses to have twins, and even more rare for them to be healthy and survive. Their co-owner credits veterinarian Andrea Kelly for their safe delivery.
She was so joyful with the babies. It was like I think she was proud that she was the main vet for these little miracle babies.
The delivery would be one of her last. The veterinarian took her own life just over a month later, a devastating and alarming loss for the horse community in the area. Kelly specialized in horses, taking over a large animal clinic in 2018. She was one of a few in the region.
Right now, we are just kind of holding on a little bit.
The vet used to make trips from her clinic in the Ottawa Valley to see patients across the provincial border. Now, some in Quebec need to drive their horses to Prescott, Ontario to see a vet. That's over an hour and a half away if there's no traffic.
If you suspect a twisted gut or something where you need them put down fast. Right now, our only way of doing that is to call in a farmer with a gun and have them come and put them down. Because we have no other way to do it.
Andrea's family says the vet loved her job, but it was a lot to take on, being on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with little to no help.
When there's so few vets graduating into this career, and there's other vets moving on and out of this career or taking a break from work, it's very hard to find staff to fill the gaps. And she ended up taking a lot of that on herself so that the clinic would survive and that those 600 clients would have care. She was not one to leave the animals without care.
And experts say fewer and fewer vet students are looking to specialize in large farm animals, leaving the few who do to keep up with the demand and pressure. Now the community is looking for solutions to try and attract more large animal vets to the region, and people are desperate to create change while also mourning the loss of a beloved doctor. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
Still ahead, John Sauder is in next with his look at the manageable forecast, including that video from Bimichikamak. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Welcome back. Many parts of the country are dealing with a shortage of healthcare workers. Nova Scotia is trying to address its needs by making it easier to hire Ukrainian healthcare professionals. Shayna Luck has this report.
Dr. Alex Shumlat is getting ready to start work in the hospital in Truro, Nova Scotia. A family physician from Odessa, Ukraine. He and his family arrived here just 2 months ago, fleeing the war.
I hope I will work like physician doctor here in Canada to help people like you helped me.
But Shumlat can't work as a doctor here yet. He's become a health support aide, helping out with patients while he works to get his credentials recognized. His wife is working too, as a community navigator, helping other Ukrainian refugees get through that licensing system and back to work.
Because a lot of very high quality medical people come here, doctors, nurses, midwives, and they don't know how to start the job here.
Nova Scotia Health just announced a new program to hire at least 10 Ukrainian navigators like Kudenka to help medical workers like Shumlat get back into the system. There is sympathy for the Ukrainian crisis, but the province's health minister acknowledges there's a crisis here too.
I think our current workforce gaps as well have caused us to look at the way we've done things in the past.
It's not just Ukrainians. Navigators from India and the Philippines will be hired soon because getting relicensed in Canada can take years and cost thousands.
I think it's frustrating for the internationally trained physicians, but it's also frustrating for those that are trained in Canada because we could use extra support and more colleagues.
And each province has a different licensing system. That's why Doctors Nova Scotia has been pushing for an Atlantic license or even a national one. It would help those who arrive from out of country.
They don't know the country well. They might have family in different parts of the country, so it would be a good opportunity for them to try out practice in different spots.
Back at the hospital, Dr. Alex Shumlat is eager to get back to work, treating patients as soon as possible. Sheila, CBC News, Truro.
The most powerful typhoon so far this year has come ashore in South Korea. It slammed into the southern coast, forcing thousands to evacuate to higher ground. The port city of Busan has been hit with high waves, strong winds, and heavy rains. Nearly 3,500 people have left the area. There are reports at least 3 people have been killed. Some areas have been reported severe damage. Seaside barriers have been smashed, roads have been flooded, and trees are down. Schools and businesses are closed and flights have been canceled. The storm is moving northeast and heading toward northern Japan. John Sauder is back, and no typhoon here, thank goodness, but we did see some beautiful northern lights, eh?
Yeah, you know, lots of talk about this online in Manitoba, even in the Winnipeg area, and in northwestern Ontario, and not that waiting up until 3 in the morning sort of thing. This all happened at around 10:30 in the evenings on Saturday and Sunday, and I have some pictures to start with. These were taken by John S. Okay, that's me. That's me. Let's be honest. Yeah, I was over in Ontario there for a couple of days and took these shots at about 10:30 in the evening on Sunday. And boy, it's been a long time since we've seen northern lights like that. And there's the third shot right there. There are plenty of shots. All I did was turn the flash off on my phone, and it just took these wonderful photos. So yeah, amazing stuff. And we're going to see a little bit more of that toward the end of the show in our daily lift. Mid-20s right now. You know, it's hard to believe it's September. Already a week into September. Normal high is 20. We're at 24 at the airport, 25 at the Forks. That was our high today. 24 in Steinbach and Selkirk. And as we go out into the western part of the province, 26 still in Melita. Brandon was at 26 earlier. So were Morden and Winkler, Portage, La Prairie. But yeah, really warm temperatures and tons of sunshine. Northwestern Ontario and the Whiteshell areas also in the mid-20s. Now, across the north, temperatures look like this right now. Earlier today, we did see some storms, and Cross Lake between Thompson and Norway House, still seeing some of that action. As a matter of fact, here's some video to show you. This is not snow. This is hail falling in Cross Lake. Patrick Wood sent this to us earlier today. So some hail coming out of a storm in that area. This will continue into the evening hours and then really just clear up into the overnight period. All right, back to our weather now and the current temperatures across the north. 17 in Island Lake, 16 in Gillam, 14 right now in Churchill. Now the forecast conditions. Under clear skies across northwestern Ontario, lows between 9 and 12, the 12 being in Kenora. Lots of clear sky across southern Manitoba as well. Single-digit lows, kind of should be at this time of year. Around 8 degrees would be a normal low for Winnipeg, and under clear skies, easy to get there. 7 in Brandon, 7s and 8s really in the west, 12 in Morden, 9 in Portage, and Morden and Winkler. And across the north, we've got windy conditions in some areas. Still a risk of a thunderstorm around Thompson. That would be early evening, and then we're seeing clearing after that. Same with Gillam and Island Lake, and across into Churchill. Winds have been gusting to 80 today. It'll settle down to a 40, gusting to 60 into the overnight period, but still very windy tomorrow with gusts to 70 kilometers per hour. You can see the warmth in the west and right across through Thompson, Norway House, and out to the east, a much calmer and brighter day. And it's all sunshine across the south tomorrow and warm. 28s and 29s right across the south. Not much cloud to speak of, especially in Winnipeg and Red River Valley. Steinbach and Sprague, a few clouds, but lots of sunshine and warmth out into northwestern Ontario with highs between 24 and 26 tomorrow.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
More than 600,000 people in Canada are currently living with dementia, and that number is expected to rise as baby boomers age. We'll hear what experts say we should do better to prepare for the next reality. That's coming up next. As Canada's population continues to age and the baby boomer generation gets older, we're going to see a big increase in the number of people living with dementia in this country. So we need to prepare. That's the message of a major new report produced by the Alzheimer's Society of Canada. It's called the Landmark Study, and the first of 3 parts is out today. Joshua Armstrong is research scientist at the Alzheimer's Society of Canada and co-author of the study. He joins us now. So Joshua, what do we need to know about the numbers of Canadians affected by dementia now and projected in the coming years?
Based on the findings from the Landmark study, well over 600,000 Canadians are currently living with dementia, and these numbers are expected to rise fairly rapidly in the next 30 years due to population aging. By 2030, we're expecting close to 1 million Canadians with dementia. By 2050, that number increases to 1.7 million.
And what is the implication of this growing number in terms of care and support?
Well, most people with dementia end up actually living in their community and in their homes and rely on family, friends, or neighbors for care and support. And with the increasing numbers of people living with dementia, there's also going to be a corresponding increase in the number of care partners who provide this kind of support. And on average, that is equivalent to about 26 hours a week of care. So you can have that from family and friends who are taking care of, but then also there will be some strains on the healthcare system.
And how would you characterize the quality of care generally for people with dementia? What would they need?
Well, our report doesn't really dig into the quality of care in Canada, but we do know that there are many different types of support provided by care partners to these people living with dementia, from assistance to day-to-day activities and self-care, things like bathing and eating, to managing their home care services, and also just overall household management. These types of care and the level of care are going to vary across different individuals. And it's also going to vary as the dementia progresses in an individual. So the needs and the amount of care will change across individuals and over time.
And how do we do that better?
Well, there's a long list of things we can do to try to address this challenge in Canada. I think it will require effort both by individuals and by healthcare systems, different levels of government, and by researchers to try to tackle this challenge. We developed a report to highlight a variety of ways that we can work to improve the path forward for dementia in Canada. We've grouped these recommendations by different perspectives, from different levels of government to researchers, all the way down to individual Canadians and how they might be able to reduce their risk for developing dementia.
And lastly, for risk reduction for dementia, what are some general guidelines for that?
Well, researchers have identified a wide range of risk factors for dementia that can be addressed by individuals. The ones that can be addressed are called modifiable risk factors. We do have non-modifiable risk factors such as age, sex at birth, your genetics. Can't do much about those, but there's a growing list of things that you can do to try to address your risk of dementia. These are fully covered in our report. And we also identify 12 actions for a healthier brain, all of which would help reduce your overall dementia risk.
Okay, well, thank you. We'll have to watch out for more information. Joshua Armstrong is a research scientist at the Alzheimer's Society of Canada and author of the landmark study being produced by the organization. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
As we go to break, don't forget to subscribe to our CBC Manitoba YouTube page. Your latest headlines are on there, and we are also now posting the newscasts. Catch up and stay connected anytime. More news after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
All right, let's put these numbers into perspective. The normal high in July, our hottest month of the year, is 26. Tomorrow, we're getting to 28, and it's cloudier with 26 on Thursday. It'll be windy. The cool day of the week is Friday at 19, but then we are back into a very stable weather pattern and back to the mid-20s by Sunday and on into early next week. And Sheila, as we were talking about earlier, northern lights in Manitoba and anywhere in this part of the world, always a really neat sight to see.
That's right. Many people from all over the province and in northwestern Ontario are still talking about this weekend's northern lights. Allison Carter and her family saw this from Nopaming Provincial Park. Her family, including 15 and 12-year-old daughters, saw the lights once before. She says when she saw the lights in Churchill, it lasted maybe 10 minutes before it died down. But Carter says Sunday night's lights were completely different. Oh my gosh,
yeah,
vivid.
It wasn't even just a few-minute experience. It was a long time. We were there for at least a good half an hour, and it was still completely lit up.
Carter describes the experience as magical. She says it was bright and filled with hues, purple and green, that danced across the sky. Look at that.
Yeah, that was really something. To see them dancing from one area to the next,
yes,
really something. So,
did you get to whistle at them while they're dancing?
No, I didn't.
Next time, try that. We'll be back at 11. Good night.